Hello, this is Cece with Going Solo, and you are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Today, we're going to go right on into it because we have a great guest with us today, and I don't want to waste any time. It is Sherry Amatenstein, and she is a therapist and author, a relationship expert. Her books range from her new book, actually, which is coming out, is How Does That Make You Feel? It's True Confessions, Both Sides of the Therapy Couch, which is very interesting. But she's got some other great books, too. We want to also embrace those. That is the Q&A dating book, Love Lessons from Bad Breakups, The Complete Marriage Counselor. So we've got some great books there. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you cover a wide range of relationships. You know, you cover relationship loss, you cover the transition of really developing yourself and moving forward. And so how did you get into such a wonderful field of helping people?
I'm a child of Holocaust survivors, so I guess I always had a giving back mentality. But my first career was in publishing. I worked at women's magazines and at websites like iVillage and at Hearst. And so when you work at women's magazines and websites, basically, what do you write about? You write about dating and marriage and divorce and all those things. So I wound up doing dating columns and being on TV and radio, talking about a lot of what I wrote. I fulfilled like a lifelong desire of mine, and I went back to school, to social work school. And some of the things that really inspired me to do that, I guess, 9/11, and I volunteered at a suicide hotline for 2 years. My parents started declining, and I just really wanted to do something more meaningful. So I became a therapist, and I have a private practice, and I work at a clinic, and I really work with all sorts of people and all sorts of problems. But because I have written so much about relationships, and 3 of my books are on relationships, a lot of couples come to me for that. You know, a therapist is a therapist, and helping is helping. You kind of want to meet people where they are. So that's why I sort of have the reputation for relationships, and I love helping people help themselves. What I always say to people is the most important relationship you're always going to have is the one with you. And that's really the major one that you have to work on, because until you do, you're not necessarily going to be going into a relationship with another person in the most healthy manner. Because it has to be the two of you are together because you want to be and because you're able to compromise and not be each other's everything. So when there's codependence and all those other things, then it's not going to work out as well. So that's kind of a long answer to your question.
Well, now that's great. You know what? You're a very unique individual. And I know that you say, well, I'm a therapist and, you know, I help and this is kind of what I do for a living. But the reality is that you stand, you know, alone in your uniqueness, because not everyone does step out and help as you do. And we do have some great guests on the show. They're very loving, giving individuals such as yourself. And so it is such a pleasure to have you. And the books that you've written are very unique in themselves, because I do agree with you that we do have to continue focusing ourselves. We have to continue building ourselves because our lives keep changing. You know, we're just evolving. And so if we don't stop and really concentrate on ourselves, how can we give up of ourselves to someone else? So, yeah, I think it's really a great thing that you do. So now tell us a little bit about relationships. Do you focus on singles, or are you also helping others in actual relationships?
Well, therapy is therapy, and people come to me for a variety of reasons, but I have individuals come to me and I have couples come to me as well. And probably my favorite is when couples come to me for premarital counseling, so they want to learn healthy relationship skills before they actually make it official. Because when couples come to me when they've been together for quite a while and they're having serious problems, it's harder to change dysfunctional patterns. Not that it's impossible, But as I always say to couples when they come to me, a big part of couples work is individual work.
That is great. I mean, I love the idea of as you're building your relationship with your partner, you meet someone and you're starting to build a relationship and you realize that it's serious, that you want to be together and you want to continue that path. I like the idea of having someone to kind of be a sounding board, to kind of help you move you through some of those situations you have. Because you know what? It is very difficult to blend, two individuals in a relationship. I mean, you might very much have feelings and love and respect and all of that, but you got to live together. And sometimes that's not always an easy thing to do, is it?
It's not an easy thing to do at all. And a lot of what I work on with couples is how to really listen to each other, how to hear each other, how to have empathy for the other, because we think that we know what the other person is saying and thinking, but really often we're just listening with our own needs in mind, and we're not really hearing them. So I do listening exercises with them. I do to teach them how to really hear each other. I have them do take-home homework. Like, for instance, I have each of them kind of write a letter. It's based on the principle of walking a mile in the other person's moccasins, where let's say it's Jane and Harry. So Harry writes a letter like he's Jane, what it's like to be married to him. And Jane writes a letter like she's Harry, what it's like to be married to her. And then they read them in the session. And, because it really is about understanding why your partner is the way they are, instead of just trying to browbeat them into changing to be the way you want them to be. And you can't really work on problem solving until you really understand where the other person is coming from.
Absolutely. That is so right. Can you give us a couple tips that we can do to try to help us a little bit more with the listening aspect of, let's say we're out, we're starting to date, we're doing the transition of dating, we're starting to date. Is there anything that you can help us with to make us, be more aware?
Well, for instance, what I do is I have one person talk at a time, and the other one has to just listen, not interrupt, because again, when we're listening to when the other person is talking, often we're in our heads and we're not really hearing them. And I say, I'm going to use Harry and Jane again. Let's say Jane is going first. So I say to Jane, not in blaming language, just talk about something that you really want Harry to understand. One thing. And Jane will talk about something. Maybe it's how she feels when he never listens to her about picking up anything around the house, any domestic chores. And she'll talk about how it makes her feel. And then Harry, then I'll say to Harry, so what did Jane say? Not your feelings around it, not your response, but what did she say? And then Harry will say, well, she said A, B, C, D. And then Jane will say, well, I said A and B, but I didn't say C or D. I said this and that. And we'll go back and forth until Jane feels that Harry heard it. And then we reverse. And then Harry doesn't have to be about the same topic, but about something he really wants Jane to understand. And then we do the same thing, going back and forth until each person feels that, they got it. Yeah, he heard me. Yeah, she heard me. Then you can try to move forward. So that's called mirroring, and it's a pretty basic listening exercise. And it's a very important one, but it's not easy to do because we're so in our own habits, and it's very, very hard to do, because it's a whole new thing to get used to.
Well, I know so often that when I've been talking to couples and individuals that have been actually out there dating, and what will happen is they'll start a conversation that they have together, but their minds, as they ask a question and the person's answering it, their mind is going to the next thing they want to talk about or the next thing they want to ask. So they're not actually listening to what the person's saying.
No, they're all over the place. They're everywhere but hearing what their partner is really saying.
Right. And so often I tell the ladies, a man will tell you exactly what you need to hear, what you need to hear at the beginning of a relationship, whether he's maybe a good match for you or not. but you've got to listen, and we don't listen. We tend to.
Well, that's another thing that I say to people when they're first dating somebody. That's your best opportunity to really understand what the other person is about. Because once you're emotionally attached, especially once you start exchanging saliva and mixing other body parts, it's harder to really have that emotional distance. So really hear them and understand and get the type of person they are, and if their goals and their values and their desires and their ethics and all those things match what you're looking for, because you can't change somebody, so this is who they are. So the best time, this is for men and women, to really judge what a potential partner is like, is to pay attention, to listen to them, to see how they are around other people, around you, and make those judgments early on before you're like madly in love. Because then again, it's much, much harder to pull away. Then you'll justify things and say, oh, well, he'll change. Oh, well, she this. Well, no, she won't. He won't.
Nope, absolutely. You are so right. Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, let's talk a little bit about your new book. How does that make you feel? And I think I'd like to know a little bit more about the book and what made you start to write it. So we'll be right back. This is Cece with Going Solo, and you are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network.
You're listening to WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network, Singles Talk Radio channel, where we take a lighthearted and candid approach to discussions on the journey of relationship loss, divorce, parenting, being single, relationships building, dating, and yes, sex. Join our listeners and begin living your best life.
This is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I have with me today Sherry Amatenstein, and she is a therapist and author, a relationship expert. She has written several books, and I'd like to mention those because I'd like for you guys to run out and get these books or read them, because I think that they will help you. The first book is called The Q&A Dating Book, The Love Lessons from Bad Breakups, and The Complete Marriage Counselor. And today we're going to talk about a brand new book, and that one is How Does That Make You Feel? So welcome back to the show, Sherry.
Happy to be here.
And it's great having you. And thank you so much for sharing the tips with us on the first part of the show. And I know that the listeners out there really do appreciate that. And if you missed the first part, you better go back and listen to it, because I think it's a lot of great information, especially when you're out there dating. And when you finally meet someone that you do want to have a partnership, those listening skills and certain things like that can help you to grow with that. But let's move right on to this book that you've written. So tell us, why did you write this particular book?
Well, How Does That Make You Feel? True Confessions for Both Sides of the Therapy Couch is an anthology. And basically the idea behind it, I mentioned in the earlier segment that I became a therapist midlife after a career working at magazines and websites. And so when I became a therapist, I was really struck by the notion of like Freud's blank slate, where the therapist doesn't reveal anything about themselves because that can interfere with what's called the transference that the patient has with the therapist. So that way, because in the therapy room, it needs to be about the patient, not the therapist. But in this day and age, especially, in the age of Google and all of that, where you can find a lot of stuff out about anybody with the click of your mouse, to be a total blank slate, it didn't seem that viable. I saw a therapist for a long time, and I knew things about her, and that was helpful for me, actually. So I just thought about the whole notion of boundaries, and also, I think that when people go to therapy, they're very vulnerable and they can be taken advantage of at that time. For instance, at a book event that I did right after this last book of mine came out, How Does It Make You Feel? Somebody said to me, oh, my therapist always has me pick up her dry cleaning. And is that normal? Well, no. So the idea of my book was to have great writers, like Patty Davis is in it, Beverly Donofrio, and the idea was to have all great writers, all well-published writers, some therapists and some patients, writing their own essays about some aspect of their experience relating to therapy. And again, no, none of the therapists who are in the book, including myself, I wrote an essay too, we did not reveal anything about patients of ours. If we did, we changed a lot of facts in there. So as not to have anybody know who we're talking about. But the idea of it was to really showcase in a very entertaining way the full range of experiences. There are great therapists and there are not so great ones. I mean, so there are definitely, like, one of my favorite stories is by a therapist, and she used a pseudonym because her piece is called I Really, Really Hate You, and it's about dealing with an incredibly narcissistic patient and just how, what an impossible position that is to be in. You know, Molly Peacock, who's a wonderful poet, I just adore her. She wrote an essay called Not Even a Smidgen, and that's about her beloved therapist of 38 years had a stroke and could no longer practice. And Molly still has a relationship with her therapist. She goes over to her apartment. They have lunch together. So it's a very wide range of essays. There's 34 essays in here, and we've gotten a lot of good reviews and definitely a great present for your therapist or patients. I mean, a lot of people at book signings get books for like their therapists. I didn't realize it was going to be such a hit in that way, but it seems to be. But I guess my premise is we're all people. We're all human. We're all crazy in our own ways. So therapists don't have to be on a pedestal to be effective. And not all therapists are going to be the right fit for you. That's the truth as well.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reasons why our station has become so popular is because the hosts on it do share of themselves. And so the listeners are, kind of walking some of the path that we've experienced, and they bond a little bit with us. And we try to make it all a very positive experience so that interjects, good positive vibes to them. And so I agree with that, that it is kind of nice to know, maybe not all, everything about your therapist.
Well,
but
definitely not all, especially as a therapist. It was very difficult and hard for a lot of the therapists in the book. Several dropped out at the last minute because they were like, I just can't do this. And one of the therapists, Vinnie Clun, she has a music radio show in Connecticut. And, it's a bit of sometimes can be a dicey divide, as she'll talk about her musical taste and things like that, but she's not going to talk a great deal about her personal life, and even because she didn't take part in any of the publicity surrounding the book. You do have to be careful. Like, I'll share with patients things about myself that relate to something that they're going through so that they feel that I understand, but I'm not going to tell them, oh, I just had a fight with a friend, or, oh, this happened or that, because that's not going to help them, and that just makes it about me. So, right. You do need some, and I'm not going to socialize, you do need boundaries, but it doesn't have to be this rigid blank slate, so that was kind of a big piece of why I did the book.
I think it's a great read, and most certainly I feel people would enjoy it, and it probably might shed a little bit of a light on therapists, that they are people and they are human. And so, yeah, I think it's a good idea and a good book. So I certainly would recommend everyone to go out and get it. It's called How Does That Make You Feel? The True Confessions from Both Sides of the Therapy Couch.
The website is howdoesthatmakeyoufeelbook.com.
Okay. That was my next question, is how can we get these books that you...
well, I mean, it's in, all the books are on Amazon, and How Does That Make You Feel is online. It's in bookstores, and there's links on my website, too, that, to link you up to get it online. But it's been out around 2 months now, so it's still in bookstores as well.
That's great. Now tell us how to get to your website.
And my relationship website that I started when I did my last book, The Complete Marriage Counselor, is marriedfaq.com. marriedfaq.com. So.
Okay. And you're still practicing as a therapist, am I correct?
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. I have a private practice, and actually I do Skype sessions with patients around the world,
Okay.
and phone sessions, and so that's my major gig, being a therapist.
Right. So they can reach you right on that website if they like what they're hearing.
Absolutely. Yes.
Feel connected to you, because I really do think that we do like the idea that our therapist is a real person that they can really get us. And I think coming on the show and sharing a little bit about yourself, your creative side and a little bit about your history, it's enough to be able to make someone think, gosh, she kind of does get what I'm kind of about. And so, let's try her out. So definitely if they want to connect on your website and do some therapy, they most certainly can.
Oh, absolutely. And my email is, Sherry, SHERRY, M like Mary, S like Sam, W at earthlink.net. But, they can contact me through the website.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It's a wealth of information you've given us, and I do appreciate you sharing. And it's just great what you do. It truly is.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
It is wonderful. Well, this is Cece with Going Solo. You are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I hope that you like this show and you like all the shows that you're listening to, and I hope you write me and tell me that you do like them and what you want to hear. You can reach me, and my email is goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. Just let us know how you feel about the shows, what you would like to listen to, and we'll bring them forward for you. So this is Cece signing off, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Gotta keep reading, 'cause this book's gonna be